This is the Logitech RS50, and at $350, it might be the best budget direct drive wheel on the market. But there is one reason you might not want to buy it. Now, to get started, pricing. The $350 price tag is slightly misleading. $350 is what the PC-only base costs. If you buy one of the bundles for consoles, that is going to set you back $699. Whereas if you set up your own PC bundle with the RS round rim and RS hub, that costs $590. Now, this is very comparable pricing to the 8mm CSL DD and the Moza R9. The CSL DD comes in at around $650, and the Moza R9's cheapest bundles come in at around $550. So this overall pricing wise actually stacks up quite well. But I said pricing was deceiving for a few reasons. I paid far less for this than $590. Logitech constantly runs sales and bundle deals. In my case, I paid just $440 for this PC-only RS50, the RS Hub, and the RS Round Wheel. An absolute killer deal in my opinion. However, sales aren't always going to be around, so we're going to be treating this like it's a $590 product. Now, undercutting all your competition like Fanatec and Moza in terms of price is all well and good, however, it is completely meaningless if the product stinks to use. Getting the Logitech RS50 mounted to our TK Falcon sim rig was quite simple. In the box, the RS50 comes with T-nut mounting rails. Super easy to use, absolutely no complaints. Software-wise, all you have to do is download Logitech G Hub, and it installs all the updates in the drivers that are necessary to use, and boom, you're ready to go. Now, since we bought the RS Hub and the RS Round Wheel individually, we had to assemble the two. It included all the necessary mounting hardware in the box, and everything simply bolted together with absolutely no complaints. Mounting the RS wheel rim to the base was a breeze. All we had to do was pull back on the collar and push it into place. Touching on build quality, the RS50 wheelbase feels very solid overall with a plastic front, plastic back, and a metal main housing. The RS wheel rim also feels quite solid in the hand with no notable flex. However, the buttons aren't the most tactile. Now, we need to make a note about the Logitech ecosystem. Currently, it is very limited. They don't have a great section of rims. All of them are largely based on the same two button boxes, and their peripherals are also quite limited, only offering a sequential shifter, the G Pro pedals, and a few other little accessories here and there. Now, in the event you want to use an H-pattern shifter, you have to use one of these guys. This is the Logitech racing adapter, and it lets you use the old Logitech G29 pedals or the old Logitech H-pattern shifter with the RS50 or the G Pro wheel. Now, in our case, since we bought it as a part of a bundle, this came included. However, usually you have to pay about $30 to get this accessory. That's not to say the Logitech ecosystem is a complete dead end and is an absolute deal breaker. For $70, Logitech sells the RS Quick Release. This allows you to use any third-party wheel that has a 70mm bolt pattern or a 50.8mm bolt pattern with either the Logitech RS50 or the Logitech G Pro. In our case, we used the Cube Controls F-Core with the RS50 to see how the adapter worked out. Now, there is something to note about this quick release adapter. It works well with any 70mm bolt pattern wheel. However, even though on the website it lists that it has a 50.8mm bolt pattern, which, while true, is a little bit deceptive. In our case, our Cube Controls F-Core uses a 50.8mm bolt pattern. The RS Quick Release did not natively work with this, and that is because it only can accept a 50.8mm bolt pattern if it is mounted through the front of the wheel. In our case, the Cube Controls F-Core mounts from the back. So we had to 3D print up a quick release adapter and use that. Although it was fine, it is not ideal that we had to use an adapter when it officially states on the website that it has a 50.8mm bolt pattern. Now that we have everything bolted up, what does it feel like to drive with the Logitech RS50? Well, overall, pretty good. The force feedback in general feels very, very good. We have excellent feeling for the car weighting up, the front tire flex, the way the weight of the car is transitioning when you're starting to get a little bit of kick of oversteer. In general, the force feedback feels great. Now, at 8mm, it is not the strongest, however, nothing in this price class is going to be. Adding to the force feedback was trueforce, and this to me was a massive surprise. I personally do not like a whole lot of gimmicks in my force feedback. As a matter of fact, I typically turn off most damping and a lot of the filters, as I simply want to feel what the car is doing, no matter if it's good info or bad info. I want it coming to my hands so I can kind of make the decision on what's useful and what's not. For me, trueforce was a very interesting addition. Now, at its default 100% in the default settings in iRacing, it was incredibly noisy and a little bit muddy feeling. Once I turned it to focus a lot on the tire scrub, I felt that it was able to provide a lot of quite useful details in the force feedback, and although it's not a absolute must, I think it's a pretty pleasant addition for a very, very competent budget wheelbase. Overall, the force feedback on the wheel is very, very good. It always felt reactive. It was more than strong enough for most cars outside of, the odd one here or there like the M2 in iRacing, which has super light force feedback. Most people who are coming from belt drive wheels or something like the Logitech G29 are going to be absolutely blown away by a wheel like this. Now, if you are more experienced and you already have had direct drives in the past, like Fanatec, CSL-DD, it's going to feel much the same, and you're not going to be overly impressed by the amount of punch this wheel has. Now, I've been competing in esports events for over 5 years on everything from a Logitech G29 to a Simucube 2 Sport. I am very experienced with sim games, and this wheelbase I personally feel I could be exceptionally competitive on. It gives me absolutely all the details I need to be fast. As a matter of fact, earlier this week I was testing it with the Indy Next car on iRacing at Portland, and I got within a few hundredths of a second of the current world record at that track, albeit in an offline test session matching official sessions conditions. So, why the heck did I say you shouldn't buy this wheel? Overall, it sounds quite good. Well, we'll start with a few of the, more subtle negatives. The RS hub, although decent, has paddle shifters that are exceptionally loud. I mean, like annoy your neighbors kind of loud. I wish Logitech would have included some dampening material to put underneath the paddle shifters to really quiet them down. The buttons on the RS hub are also pretty mediocre. They feel a lot like an Xbox controller's buttons, and I did hit them a few times while catching oversteer, which is pretty annoying to be hitting oversteer and then, pit limiter. So the button box isn't ideal, plus the limited Logitech ecosystem is also not great. Along with that, I did also encounter a handful of bugs when using the wheel. For some reason, G-Hub constantly reset the trueforce setting to 100%. I typically would run it at about 20% to keep the detail coming in through the wheel while not being muddy or overwhelming. However, every time I would load up a new session in iRacing or I would join a different race in something like Assetto Corsa, all of a sudden it would reset back to 100% and trueforce would be buzzing away at 100%. And that brings up another negative. Trueforce is incredibly loud. It vibrates the wheel and the rig like crazy, and although this weirdly can be somewhat immersive where you feel through the seat because it's vibrating the rig so much, the curb feeling and all that stuff, for my downstairs neighbors, I felt kind of bad for them. All you need to do is listen to this clip of trueforce at 100% to understand just how loud it really can be. Overall, those are some pretty minor difficulties, so why would I say you might not want to buy this wheelbase over some pretty minor nitpicks? Well, the wheelbase that's sitting in front of me right now is kinda dead. Now, although it does still work to an extent, anytime I run it at 8mm, it cannot sustain that torque level. If I hit a curb while running at 8mm max, it will just shut off. You can see a video right here. I understand that this is a new product and manufacturing defects can happen, so I reached out to customer support after the issue appeared, and after almost 2 weeks of going back and forth with customer support, we really didn't have a resolution. They simply would say, hey, we're going to take a look at the wheelbase, and then would kind of go nowhere. So in the end, I ended up returning the wheelbase for a refund, and this is going to be shipped out at the end of the review. It is an unfortunate reality because I think this is a pretty kick-ass wheelbase. I just wish that the customer support was a little bit more responsive in terms of getting an exchange out instead of kind of forcing me to return the unit. Well, if you liked our review, please don't forget to like and subscribe to us on YouTube, and as always, you can learn more on breaktrace.com.